Okay, everyone, we're going to get started if that's all right. So, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you have been enjoying the terrific program next door. My name is Lee Gilmore, and I am the General Manager of the Global Live Journalism business at WSJ Barron's Group. This is going to be a really exciting conversation titled The S in ESG and Rural Communities. And as you'll hear in just a moment, as we've actually been hearing all morning, rural communities play such a critical role in America's food security. And giving back or supporting these communities that contribute so much to ultimately our well-being is going to be more and more important in guaranteeing the overall health of our food supply system. Before I introduce our wonderful speakers, a couple of housekeeping notes. So first, we're going to have 25-30 minutes of this discussion. And if you'll hold your questions to the end, this is being recorded. At the end of that, we'll move to non-recording, so you don't have to worry about what you're going to say. No one else is going to hear it outside of this room. And we'll come to audience questions. And then we really encourage you to have an open and interactive dialogue. The whole point of a breakout is that it's less formal and we can actually have something of a chat. So if that sounds good, we're going to get started, and I'd like to introduce our two speakers. So first of all, please welcome Tim Schellpeper, CEO of JBS USA, one of the top food processing companies in the country, and Moore County Judge Rowdy Rhoades. I was just so excited to meet somebody called Rowdy, I have to tell you. As an English girl from Wimbledon in southwest London, this is my first Rowdy, and I'm very excited. So welcome, gentlemen. Thank you so much for being here. As I mentioned earlier, we're obviously going to talk about the S in ESG and why supporting these social initiatives in rural communities is critical to our food security. But first, I'd just love for the audience to get a bit of a sense of who you are and where you come from. So, Rowdy, let's start with you. Okay. You have described Moore County as a small county at the top of Texas. Population is a little over 20,000, I believe. For the benefit of the audience, could you tell us a little bit about what your role is as county judge? Is it kind of like the mayor or the CEO of Moore County?
I'm a constitutional county judge. My duties, I do have A and B misdemeanors jurisdiction. I do have a county court of law that takes care of that. I do all the guardianships, probates, mental health. I'm kind of like the city manager of the county. I'm responsible for budget. And Texas is a little bit different. Each elected official has their own budget. So they present their budget and we approve their separate budget. But it's, and I was born in Dumas, Texas.
I was just going to ask you if you've been there
your
entire
life. Moved away for a short time, moved back. My junior year, graduated 2 years before MTV, so I'm pretty old. But I've been there the majority of my life in Moore County, small county.
And thank you. And Tim, now the head of an enormous processing company, but you started out, I believe, also in a rural community in northeastern Nebraska. Perhaps you can tell us a little bit about, you know, the change between where you started out and now, and the evolution of the rural community in America in that time.
Well, that's personally been an evolution for me. I probably started out moving hay bales or something like that on a family farm. So yes, I grew up about 8 hours west of here in northeast Nebraska, and still maintain a residence there, longtime family farm. And as you look at that area around northeast Nebraska, the amount of food production that is there is really significant, with beef processing, pork processing, a new poultry facility, egg production. And I don't think that that's unique to an area like northeast Nebraska. My travels have taken me different parts of the country, and I think this food production is in so many small rural communities. And I think helping those communities thrive so they can attract or retain their talent is really just very important. And I think you listen to Mr. Pratt's comments this morning on that video. He talked about the multiplier effect of food production in these local communities can be significant. So rural communities are very important, I believe, to the food supply.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, especially that multiplier effect, because rural communities in America have been declining for decades, a much publicized fact, and were disproportionately hurt by the pandemic. So when we think about ESG, and there's a lot of attention on the environment, which is, of course, critical for food supply, but you're saying that the social should not just not be overlooked, but should maybe be prioritized. And, you know, can you talk to us a little bit about why that is so critical?
Yeah, all three, the E, the S, and the G are all very important. But I would say over the last couple of years, we've taken particular interest in the S, the social. For us at JBS, we have 65,000 US-based employees. We operate in 28 different states, probably 60-some communities, a little over 60 communities. And keeping those communities thriving for us is just very important, and the impact then that we have on those rural communities. In our mission statement, we reference creating opportunities for a better future for our team members. And focusing on the S, we believe, is bringing that mission statement to life.
And Rowdy, for you, actually hailing from the community in this discussion, the last couple of years have been pretty challenging, I would imagine, for Moore County and other communities like that. When it comes to social initiatives, what has been most helpful? We spoke a little bit earlier, and you were talking about, to use a term you did not use, but I'm using it now, it has been game-changing, it sounds like, for Moore County.
Like I said, I was basically raised in Moore County. The geographics we were about 70% white Caucasian, 30% Hispanic. It's totally reversed. We're about 80% Hispanic, 19% Caucasian, 1% other. So everything has changed. And JBS has always been there. Different names, this has been bought several times, and most of the people I talk to, I work at the beef packing plant. This change around, when the pandemic happened, I actually, when I made more contact with JBS, we were getting a lot of criticism from the government. Went out there, and while JBS was way ahead of everything, we actually took your ideals to the courthouse and our buildings. They were way ahead of the game. They were, you walk through doors, you have to spray your hands, you look like an astronaut. You're walking through foam, you walk up, they take your temperature. We'd never seen that type of stuff. So we were able to use some of that. And I did, the first major conversation, I did ask Mr. Schellpeper, what does this cost? And it was very quick. It doesn't matter what it's cost. We know we have to take care of our employees. I've seen an industry that was making money with a large turnover, but they were concentrating on just making money. JBS does a very good job of what they do. The S, now they're taking care of their employees. It's kind of like a mom and pop shop. Your small businesses, and I'm from a business, you take care of your employees and they're with you forever. They have a very high rate of pay, $24 to $29 an hour, which is, two couples can make a good living. And also shorter hours, 8-hour work. They did one thing that I don't know where they got the ideal, but actually giving their employees a second chance to go back to college, tuition, but also to their kids. And
tuition for the children
yeah,
too. So way beyond, we're really talking about way beyond providing the job in the meat packing plant that has been there for a long time. I mean, Tim, how did this come to you? You know, I know it's a relatively recent project, but what made you change the way JBS has been running in Moore County and add this social component?
Well, I think we've always tried to be good corporate citizens, to be involved in the community and responsive to the community needs. But I think we all learned a lot as we went through the pandemic, and maybe there were some reminders in there as well. We were reminded how important these local communities were to us, and maybe how important we are to the local communities. And so as we were going through the the late spring and the summer of 2020, and we were looking at the needs of the community, and we saw that there was an opportunity to give back, an opportunity to invest. So we really focused on initially three areas. One was COVID relief and medical help that we could offer the local communities.
So was that like PPV and?
Yeah, we had access to maybe masks or gowns and whatnot, or gloves that maybe the school systems didn't have, and so we were.
So way beyond the processing plant, this went out into the community, right?
And we were able to help some places with those needs. So one was medical relief, and one was infrastructure, and that's helping the local communities just to become better places for our team members to live. And then the third one was food security. And we've really focused some giving contributions, longer-term commitments to the local food banks. And in some cases with our infrastructure as well. We've provided several delivery trucks that we bought, purchased for the local food banks to either pick up goods or deliver them.
Rowdy, you talked about that a little with me earlier. You said the trucks actually came to the community and literally handed meat.
Yes, and most industries, when it was COVID, they were more worried about taking care of themselves. And we had tunnel vision. JBS is there, they're the biggest employer in Moore County. And we knew they were there, but we never paid much attention. The food, a really big thing is when we did have the meetings, we talked about housing. Our counties, Dumas and Cactus and Sunray and Eder, we have more people come from out of town, that live out of town, that come to work in our county. We don't have housing. JBS did a very good job. They built an apartment complex. I think they probably didn't like to be in the apartment business, but these employees could walk to work, but that didn't solve the problem. And for them to reach out and, first of all, people who's never owned a home, and we're different from y'all, the big cities. We're not like Austin, Texas or anything. But these people rented shacks, apartments in Cactus. They have a home. They helped them finance closing, finance a home, walk them through the process. And a lot of these people aren't educated, so they needed help. And that was our biggest deal. Out of everything we asked for, housing was the one we didn't think we'd get. But they're actually building homes, and I think they have a lot of employees is already qualified for housing. So now they've taken a local builder, and they're building houses that people will be their first home. And the difference between an apartment and a home is you take care of your home. You don't take care of your apartment. So,
right.
And it bonds them to the community. No other company has done that.
You said the meetings. How did you gentlemen get together? How does that work? Is there a steering committee? How do you bring the interests of the company and the interests of the community? How did you know to focus on those three core initiatives? Sure. Talk me through a little bit how that came about.
So I'll give you my perspective on that early on in the pandemic, because we're generally one of the largest, if not the largest employer in some of these communities. We invited Rowdy and the mayors of both Cactus and Dumas, city managers, some local county commissioners, just to come into our plant to see what we were doing to try to keep our team members safe and recognize our role in the community, if you will. Well, that ended up being a very constructive meeting. And as we moved forward then and rolled out our Hometown Strong program, where we were investing back in these local communities.
Now that's the program you're investing around $100 million.
It's about $100 million
across multiple communities.
Correct. It's about $70 million or so in the local infrastructure. It was about $20 million or so, a little north of $20 million on housing, and then there was food bank contributions as well. So that group that we originally had together, we brought them back together, and we laid out in front of them our Hometown Strong program and the amount of funds that we would potentially have to invest in Moore County. And that really kind of started the discussions. And city managers are doing their job. They had a list of ideas that they were able to bring to us right away. Some fit our programs, maybe some didn't. But that really started the dialogue, and that communication was really so important.
And from your perspective?
It was a long-term fix too, because kind of like a church, if you have youth in your church grows. What JBS did with even the college, stuff like that, but the housing, they don't just say, hey, I work at a beef packing plant, I work for JBS. That's totally different what I've seen in the past. And like I said, the COVID was a bad thing, but a lot of good things came from it.
So I'll jump in here, Lee, also on, particularly around housing, and they brought up housing right away, and initially that was maybe a little bit more than we wanted to jump into, but we had a head start. As Rowdy mentioned earlier, we had an apartment complex down there, about 150 units or so, and so we knew from our team members who lived in the apartments that there was demand for high quality housing, and we also knew that our retention rates, our turnover rates, our absenteeism rates we had the data that suggested if we could have people live in the community, they were good long-term employees. But there was years of working with different builders and the community leaders to try to come up with the right program, and it wasn't until a meeting last summer that we had in Dumas at the Economic Council building, where we were all meeting again, pretty much the same group, but this time a builder came, a local builder who had some really good creative ideas, and I think what came out of that is a shared vision. And there was alignment between the needs of the company, the needs of our team members, generally they're the same, but then the needs of the community, and now the needs of the developer or the builder. And we're able to, little by little, start putting all that together, and as Rowdy said, we're now building homes.
That does seem to be the magic sauce, the idea of connecting all of these leaders in these different areas and understanding what each stakeholder needs, but also what they bring to the table, and then developing a strategy out of that. That seems to be, because what it seems to be that you're saying is there are lots of communities in America where you can offer somebody a job, even housing, you can offer them a house. But the community is, I think what you're saying, is going to provide a self-generating, organically growing, no pun intended, organically growing community that has longevity. Because are you already strategizing around, okay, so we've got mum and dad who have a nice house now, they've maybe got a couple of kids, and you've built some infrastructure like the baseball field that you said, the Little League baseball field was it in Dumas that they...
Incredible. And if y'all are from bigger cities, y'all are probably really used to some really nice stuff. And our Little League was struggling, trying to get the youth to play. Our fields we thought were great until they came in and put concrete and nice things, and you don't realize what you don't have when you don't have it. So the first year, they had more kids sign up than they had coaches, and it was an incredible season. This year's an incredible season, and those youth will remember that. We'll have kids that'll be coaches one day. They'll play in high school where they weren't able to play before.
So you have things for the small children, and then those children grow up. And the history of rural America is they say, thanks, that was an idyllic childhood. Now I'm off to the big city to do something else. What is your strategy around retaining, I'll come to you first, Tim. What is the strategy, the long thinking around keeping these communities entrenched so that obviously people will always move, but that the majority of that community feels connected and grounded and stays within itself?
So it starts with having the community be a nice place, right? That's the water parks, the ballparks, all these projects that we've had the opportunity to be part of. But then I think as you think longer term, to your point, the children grow up and they move away. This last year we started a program that we call Better Futures, which is a tuition-free 2-year college education program for our team members and their dependents. And we've partnered with local colleges, community colleges, in the case of Moore County with Amarillo College, where our team members or their dependents can go back and study anything. It's their choice, and it's not tuition reimbursement, it's tuition paid. And so we're funding this college education with the hope that they don't necessarily need to come back to work for JBS. But if that's home for them, and they want to build their home there and build their life there, they're being armed with an education, and then hopefully make that community a better place. And there's entrepreneurials and whatnot that will make that community a better place to be.
I mean, Randy, I'm sorry, Rowdy. Look, I love the name so much, and I called him Randy. So, Rowdy, are you able to connect? Are you able to bring into this discussion the other industries and companies that are based in the county?
Yeah. Well, and like I said, Moore County, very small county. JBS being the biggest employer, they are probably the biggest beef packing plant, provide more meat than all America. We have Fiera Brothers Dairy, which is the world's largest dairy. We have Valero Refinery, which is a very big refinery. We have all kinds of farming, feedlots, we're cattle and horses and dogs. But this is probably the only industry that reached out. And I have a lot of family members that work for different corporations, and one of the big corporations, they don't enjoy their job, but they can't leave that job because they're making a living. They're very bored with their job. The benefit is money. When you go back to social, there's more than money. That's where the mom and pops got it. I was a small business and I kept employees forever, but it was more than pay. I appreciated them. If they needed off, I gave them off, but I told them thank you every day. Treated them like family instead of employees.
That's very interesting. I mean, Tim, can you speak to how a huge corporation can replicate a mum and pop? That's really what we're talking about here. I mean, how do you take the daily thank you and of course, Cindy, you can have the afternoon off to see the doctor. How do you replicate that when you're a huge corporation? How do you, as the CEO, make sure that is happening at the actual meat packing plants?
Well, I think it's grounded in culture, whether it's at the corporate office or in our facilities, and we work really hard to have a good culture inside of our company, inside of our plants. We're pretty hands-on. I myself and members of our senior team, we're out in the plants a lot, and one of the things that we do when we're there is we'll just have roundtable meetings with our team members at the plant, regardless of the job that they might have, and just to find out how things are going inside the facility, what we can do better, get the feedback, but then most importantly, act upon that feedback. So I would say it's a very hands-on approach is how we try to do that, and having that consistent culture.
So, audience, I'm coming to you in just a few moments for audience questions. So if you want to start thinking what you'd like to ask Rowdy and Tim, now's the time. I have another question first, though. This costs a bucket load of money. This is not a small investment. We've talked about you're investing $26 million across, I think, 9 rural communities in the US, including Rowdy's.
Just in housing.
Just in housing, because you've got your $100 million, which is your Home Strong.
Hometown Strong.
Thank you. I'm glad you're here, because otherwise it'd be dodgy. The Hometown Strong program and the Better Futures program. So how are you going to measure ROI? I mean, I'm thinking about timeframes and also how you think about it.
Well, I think that's a great question, and I would tell you that we don't have some financial metric or payback model that we look at. But here's what we know. If you wanted a hard number, I would say it's things like turnover rates, applicant flow, absenteeism. Those are hard metrics that we can look at, as well as maybe internal promotions is another one. People that choose to take on bigger roles. But I think what it really comes down to is a number of things. One, we need team members. I mentioned earlier 65,000 team members, 3,500 in the plant in our plant in Cactus, Texas. And if we can have a consistent group of team members that are engaged and understand our business model, we'll do a better job for our customers.
Right.
We'll have higher quality product. Our service levels will be better. Our quality will be better, and that's really what we look at. And again, you know, I learned a long time ago as a young plant manager, there's a number of good things that make up a good employer. And so one of the metrics I look at is a metric around how are people proud of where they work. Mm-hmm. It's kind of the top of the pyramid for me, if you will. And the number of volunteer hours that our team members do in the local communities, whether it's helping clean up before the county fair or participating in the local parades, whatever the case may be, is significant. And they're out there with their company shirt on and whatnot. And so to me, it's not really a hard number, but I think it's telling.
And like Rowdy said, I work for JBS, not I work at the meatpacking plant. What are your final word to you before we go to audience questions? What about from the payback from the community standpoint? What is your measure of success, Rowdy? Have you got it yet? Are you still building it?
Oh gosh, I think the biggest thing too, we've got such a good communication, and it's unbelievable. One thing that we talked about earlier too is that was an industry where everybody had to drive to work, and I was a deputy sheriff a long time ago, and I worked midnights. But the broke down cars on the side of the road, most of those people were going to JBS to work. And Mr. Schellpeper brought that to my attention the other day, was look at our parking lot. Well, I went and looked at their parking lot. They have nice cars. So socially, they're happy. Mm-hmm. They're getting more benefits. Insurance was a really big thing. Mm-hmm. Housing, respect. I think respect. It doesn't matter how much meat you have or how many cattle you have, but if you don't have employees, you don't have a business.
100%.